Good evening. Hello, everyone. My name's Tom. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO here, and I am delighted to see so many people packed in standing room only. It's one of the reasons I think we've been so successful, that people like you have given up your Monday evenings to come and hear me rant on about banking, so I really, really appreciate it. How many of you came to our Paul Street office to hear one of the card handout talks and pick up a Monzo Alpha or Monzo Beta card? Excellent. You'll hear exactly the same talk a year and a half later. But it really is people like you who've put your trust in us and really supported us through the good times and also the tough times, of which we had more than a few with our prepaid scheme. So thank you for bearing with us. I'm going to talk for about 5 or 10 minutes, so please make sure you're well sort of stocked up on drinks, and we only have drinks. Food coming. So I'm going to talk for 5 or 10 minutes about the progress we've made, particularly over the last 6 months, and then I'm going to open up for Q&A for frankly as long as you want. I think we have a box or a mic we'll throw around. We used to have a soft box and it broke, so don't throw this one around, it will break your head. So with no further ado, we'll move on to one of my most favourite slide. Oh, there we go. So this is based on an algorithm actually a guy at my previous work wrote, which has mapped out every single Monzo and now Monzo card activation in the UK. I'll try to play it for you. You may have seen it on Twitter already. So this is from the earliest days. So it's the growth of the prepaid scheme, expanding outside London into the major cities, and then really getting outside the major cities. We're now something like 30% in London, 70% outside London. And you can see basically you saturate the entire country with prepaid cards until we decide that's a terrible idea and we should start giving out current accounts. And that's the red dot, again, starts in the cities and expands and expands and expands and turns the country hot coral. So that's on Twitter if you want to go and have a look. It's a cool visualization of sort of how it starts with a seed. And that seed really was many of you who came to the office and picked up that Monzo Alpha card and gave us £100 of your hard-earned money to screw around with and try and build a bank. And I'm very happy to announce that we've now done so. So thank you so much for your support. Woo indeed. Let's go back here. So, if you read our any of the updates we put out, I guess, over the last few months, you'll know that in 2017 we grew massively, from about 50,000 accounts to about 500,000 accounts in the space of about 8 or 9 months, a 10x growth with basically no paid ad spend. That was the good news. Most banks spend a couple of £100 acquiring a customer. The bad news was that we spent nothing acquiring customers, but it cost us about £65 to service an account on prepaid, which, when you have 500,000 customers, ends up to a lot of cash burn. And so moving off the prepaid onto the current accounts was a massive step towards making Monzo sustainable so we can keep it free for you forever. So once we migrated people from the prepaid onto the current account, we've reduced a £62 loss or cost to a £22 cost. We've moved on from there. New users, so the people who've migrated from prepaid are still pretty stuck on their card top-ups, which is why they're costing a bit more. New users are putting their salaries in at a faster rate, and so they're only costing about £17. They're putting bank transfers in, let me say, rather than using the card top-up. If you put your whole salary in, actually it's only costing us about £6.50. So without really charging for anything, or making any money from any of our lending products or our marketplace products, we're running a salaried account for about £5 or £6, which is pretty spectacular. Again, most of the big banks, it costs them about £120 to run an account for a year. If you put your salary in, we can do so for about £5 or £6 of cost. So that evolution from a £65 loss on prepaid to a £6 loss now on salaried current accounts is due to some massively, massively hard work from the team here, so I'd like to thank them. And for trust, and due to trust from those of you who've chosen to put your salaries in. And if you haven't chosen to put your salaries in, you can now use the current account switch service to do so. So a few of the things that are going on. So this is the proportion of customers who are putting their salaries in. Started out about 8% back in January. Bear in mind, most people only got their current accounts in December or January. It's now hit about 15% of users putting a salary in. And it should get a lot easier with the launch of the current account switch service. Is this live for everyone now? Almost. In the next few days, so something like half of you it'll be rolled out to about 50% of the user base so far. And you can find it in your app if you go to the account settings. There's the option to switch your salary to Monzo. So the current account switch service is an amazing, amazing invention that was mandated by the UK government, who basically wanted to increase switching rates. So they had this piece of this piece of central infrastructure where if you trust Monzo enough, you can give us your old account number and sort code, and basically we switch everything over. So your direct debits, your standing orders, and any inbound payments to your old account get redirected to the new account for 36 months, including your salaries and mates sending you money for beer or whatever it is. So it helps you switch from your HSBC account, say, to your Monzo account, really in a few taps. And it takes 7 working days, and there's a guarantee that if anything goes wrong, your bank is on the hook for it, not you. So that's us in this case. So that's been going really, really well. I used it to switch earlier in the year, and it went perfectly. We've run probably about 500 switches through it so far, and we're just taking it slowly, ramping it up to everyone. But if you're ready, you can now make the switch. The other thing we're working on is overdrafts. So this is something we've been testing since early last year. And again, that's available to probably over half of the people now. So we do a credit check, which leaves a soft footprint on your credit file. So it shouldn't impact your ability to get credit in future. And then if you want to, you can select to take an overdraft, somewhere between £0 and £1,000. And by default, it's off. So you only go into your overdraft if you opt in, which is always something that was very important to us. So that overdraft will help us cover the kind of £6, £7, £8 cost of a salaried account and get to break even and profitability, which is, again, is really, really important to build a sustainable business that we have those revenue lines. But it's always opt-in. The cost is 50p a day with no other charges. And that's it. Yeah. The fees and charges were always the thing that upset me with my bank, that I felt like I'd slip up and I'd get whacked around the head, and I'd find out about it 3 weeks after the fact. So notifying you up front and giving you a real choice with very, very clear fees is something that we really believe in. Finally, well, not quite finally, there are a couple more things. So this logo is the marketplace. We've been running this in sort of very early alpha preview for about 2,000 customers. And it's like less than 1% done. So the vision, and if you came to any of these events before, the vision is the same as it always has been, which is to create a single control center for all of your money, to help you visualize and control your money wherever it sits, whether it's your student loan that you're paying down, or your rent or your mortgage, or your gas bill that you know you should switch but you never get round to it, or maybe you've got a few £1,000s spare and you want to invest it somewhere, put it into a peer-to-peer lender or buy some stocks and shares. All of those sort of tasks that we know we should be doing as adults, but frankly most of us don't get round to. And so if you can imagine your most financially savvy, organized friend, and you might be one of these people, or you certainly know someone who has spreadsheets and calendar reminders and really has everything in order, we realize that's not most people. That's not me. But our vision of Monzo is for the Monzo to become that savvy, that financially savvy friend for you, to take care of all of those annoying, niggly things in your financial life that you know you should do, that you haven't got time for, you don't get round to. So across 10 or 15 different products and services and problems, Monzo can step in and make your life easier. Whether it's sending money abroad, or opening an ISA with Nutmeg, or comparing your car insurance on Money Supermarket, all of this stuff should be automatic. It should just work. To give you, at the end of the month, 1 or 2 choices. And by the way, these logos are used without permission, and I've apologized repeatedly to these companies. These are not our current partners. I think we'd like to work with many of them. But Monzo should give you 1 or 2 decisions a month to make and take care of all of the other bullshit. Just make it all work. It really is not that complicated when you break it down, but the amount of friction and annoyance. I recently opened a savings account through our marketplace, and the rate was great, but then I had to go through 5 pages of forms. It was just a pain. Why? Monzo's got that information already. And so with 1 or 2 taps, I should be able to open a new account in the Monzo app, transfer money there, get a good interest rate, and then when I need it back, swipe it back into my main account. Even turning a pot, and many of you use pots, turning a pot into a savings pot by sweeping it to Atom or sweeping it to Oak North and earning some interest, but still within the Monzo app. And when I need it for my tax bill or my car insurance or whatever, just swiping it back. That's ultimately the vision, a single place that lets you visualize and control all of your money, wherever it sits. So we're currently going through an exercise which I probably shouldn't preempt, of sort of really defining this like vision or this mission. It's something I've talked about and written about because I'm very passionate about it, but I'm not sure it's like cleanly articulated in a set of words. So that's what we're trying to do now. I think there's a category-defining shift happening. That's something, a wanky phrase startup founders use a lot. And what I mean by that is it's not just like a bank account with some bells and whistles, with some shiny features, with some emoji. That is what Monzo is right now. That is not what we need to build to get to millions or 100 millions or 1 billion users. It needs to be 10 times better. And that 10 times better is a shift from this old school thinking of it's my current account and my mortgage and my credit cards, very separate financial products, to a smart control center that gives me visibility and control of all of my money wherever it sits. That new thing is coming. And again, wanky startup founder phrase, it's like the move from the old Nokia phones to the iPhone. It feels like that category sort of defining shift will happen. I don't know whether it's this year or next year or the next 5 years, but I think that's going to happen. And we're going to be working pretty hard to make sure it's us that provides that service. So I think that's everything. Oh, that's not everything. Last thing, crowdfunding. We did 2 crowdfunding rounds, which were awesome, and many of you hopefully got to invest. But it also caused a lot of resentment that people who wanted to invest weren't able to. And we'll blame European regulation. There's a cap on crowdfunding of 5 million euros every 12 months, which meant that we had 12 million pounds worth of pledges to invest, and we couldn't take everyone's money. What we would love to do, and we started putting the pieces in place for this, is to do a much, much larger crowdfunding component of our next fundraise. And so I don't know how much it's going to be. A couple of other fintechs recently raised in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Our next round won't be for at least 6 months, I don't think. But at that point, we'd love to include a really big component of crowdfunding so that anyone who wants to invest gets to. And it's not capped to 1,000. You can invest more if you want to. So that's on the cards. More plans when they're more firmed up. But we heard you loud and clear. It was frustrating that people who pledged to invest and tried to support Monzo weren't able to in the majority of cases, which was a bummer. So that should be fun. That's everything from me. I would love to answer any questions you might have. So the microphone is at the back. So why don't we start with a question towards the back? Have to come to the front.
Hi. Any plans for taking advantage of open banking and the PS2 standards?
Yeah.
And there's a roadmap for it.
So open banking, if you, I suspect everyone in this room knows, open banking basically says to the banks, you've got to open up APIs so that if a customer wants to share their data with other providers, they can, and it allows account aggregation. It really allows this. Right? It's an enabler of this marketplace banking because you can see all your accounts in one place. So it's something we are looking at to be the control center, to be the single hub, absolutely giving you visibility of your Amex bill or your savings accounts elsewhere is a core part of that. It's not something that's going to happen in the next month or two, honestly, but it's a core part of this marketplace vision. Making sure we're sustainable as a business and not loss-making is probably priority number 1, which means salaries and getting some lending products out. But this market, we're doing that to give ourselves a really solid sort of financial base to build off and actually create this super powerful marketplace in future. So yeah, I think it's a huge step forwards.
So is that actually a roadmap or it's evolving?
Our roadmap is evolving. So yeah, we don't plan very much further out than a couple of months. Right down here.
Thank you. I was one of the earlier Monzo beta, and more than a question is if you will able to take the same opportunity that the Italian bank Widiba, that started in 2014, they got amazing results thanks to the quick change, so to the switch.
Current account switch service.
Current account switch service that started in Italy 2 years ago. It was a great opportunity for them to get dormant small account. So people decided not just to move only the major account, but also the dormant ones.
Yeah. That's a great point. It's not something we thought of, but it's certainly possible.
And the figures, because for them was amazing. They got like 3 times more the numbers of accounts they were expecting.
Wow. Cool.
Obviously, the amounts were low, but the number was great, and for them was a double figure. So
interesting.
Getting a new customer.
Cool. Great idea. Yeah. Let's chat afterwards. I'd love to know the bank in question. Thank you.
Thanks. You've obviously need to get more people to generate income from them. Otherwise, we won't be here in 3 years' time because you're a business, the runway will run out.
Yep.
Have you considered? I know in other projects you've been quite open and honest with your customers. Emails saying it costs us money.
Oh yeah,
to
the top-up email. Yeah.
Let's be honest with you. If you can do it via a bank transfer, it's better for us.
Yep.
Have you considered giving either a rating or kind of a thumbs up or a thumbs down to users to actually show whether they're covering their own costs or not? Uber style, maybe.
Most customers are not, and it would be a big it wouldn't be a thumbs down. It would be like a middle finger. It would feel like. But seriously, it's a good point that.
Transparency.
Yeah, I think communicating publicly, if you use your account in these ways, it costs us a bunch of money. So if you take out a lot, foreign ATMs, that was clearly a thing that caused a big problem. The problem was the people who cost us the money didn't care. And if you really, really want to go all in, put your salary in. That is the thing that will help us get to profitability faster. So if you think, and there's the financial services compensation scheme, so your money's guaranteed. And most of us here at Monzo have been putting our salaries in for the last 6 months or so, and it seems to work pretty well. So if you do want to support us, put the salaries in, but you're right, we could reinforce that message to the wider audience. And now CAS has only been ready for about the last week or two, honestly, and so we haven't pushed that salary message, but that's something we're going to be doing more prominently over the next couple of months, I would think.
Okay, no roadmap questions, because it's like online, it's on Trello, everyone can see it.
Sure.
Okay, so you have competitors, this is a fact, right? How do you ensure that you are making the most rational decisions that will eventually lead to your vision of the marketplace? Or rather, how do you balance staying competitive with your core vision that you have clearly and that's very obvious?
Balance that with making money and staying alive.
Yeah, and staying on top of things and staying on top of whatever everyone else is doing. And
yeah. So I read an annoying article about how startup founders always start with "so," as if to rationalize their. So I'm going to stop doing that, or try to. It's like a weird nervous tick. Our competitors, I think, are HSBC, Barclays, Lloyds, Santander, and RBS. I think it's too easy to get caught up in this fintech bubble and say, "Oh, Revolut raised 300 million, N26 raised 160 million, and et cetera, et cetera." It's easy to say we're competing against them, but ultimately we're not. We're competing against apathy and the really big banks. And I think there are differences between ourselves, and pretty substantial ones between ourselves and Revolut and N26, but I just don't think it matters. We can kind of grind ourselves into oblivion, fighting against each other, but actually, let's focus on I saw a survey the other day that said something like 6 or 7% market, brand awareness. That means 93% of people have no idea who any of us are. So let's focus on those people rather than, whether we're trading crypto or have coin roundups. It's just not really relevant, I don't think. Relate your question. The thing we struggle with sometimes is how much do we focus on the short term of getting to just break even versus investing in the longer term of this marketplace vision, and trading that off with growth. So we're acquiring about 60,000 new accounts a month at the moment, which is pretty good. We're at 600,000. We'll be at 1 million by the end of the year. That puts us comfortably in the top 10 UK banks, current account banks, I guess. But you always want to grow faster. But when you're losing money, growing faster means you lose more money. So that's a real trade-off right now. growth versus revenue versus investing in this marketplace stuff. And as a result, like number one priority, unit economics, like the economics of running an account. Number two, priority growth, and then number three, priority marketplace. So the marketplace has not got anywhere even close where I'd like it to be, which is frustrating because it was one of the reasons that I was so excited about Monzo, and many of you were, this idea of the control center. But like account economics and then growth, hopefully that then gives us an amazing foundation. We get to 1, 2, 3, 4 million customers to then be able to go to gas and electricity providers and get the best deal for our customers, or go to savings account providers. With that market force, I guess, with that many customers, we're a pretty big clout. So it's frustrating, but I think it's, well, at least we've figured out, or we've decided for us, it's the strategy we want to take, whether it's the right one or not.
Thanks.
Hi.
You mentioned Monzo needs to be 10x better. How much better do you think Monzo is right now? And how much of that gap is going to be closed by the marketplace versus other aspects of the service?
So, I mean, I think all of this is like, I use the 10x better phrase, and so, and then there's no scientific basis for that, right? So with that in mind, I think we're like 1.5x better or something, 50% better, 20% better, depending on who you ask. Because some users actually are not better than a current account. So for younger people, for people who live their lives on their phones, for people who live in metropolitan areas, we are between 20 and 50% better. And frankly, for some users, we are not better than their existing current account. We should accept that. So the priority right now is to close that gap for some people, and there are big gaps in our offering. Apple Pay, number one. So I just thought I'd mention that before someone else does. Things like depositing cash, things like international payments, things like earning kind of interest or rewards, or feeling like you're getting something for trusting Monzo with your hard-earned cash. These are all big gaps that we're aware of that mean we're not 2x better for everyone. And so we need to close those gaps to get to 50% better, or 100% better. But yeah, to get from double as good to 10 times better, really, that for me, that's marketplace. And it's just making all of the hassles of your money go away. That it's about anxiety, it's about peace of mind, it's about sort of just improving your quality of life. I think that really is killer versus it's a current account with some notifications and low fees or charges. That's nice, but it's not 10 times better. So that's roughly where I think we are. Does that make sense?
Are there any plans to get into mortgage lending?
Absolutely not. The reason is that it's extremely capital intensive and commoditized. And so we would, on the other hand, buying a house is an aspiration of millions and millions of people. And the process of getting a mortgage is very painful, let me say. This is being televised, so I'll try and swear less. So we would like to make it really, really easy, if you have a Monzo account, to get your first mortgage, or if you have a mortgage, to make sure you're getting the best deal on that mortgage. Absolutely, within the Monzo app, within the Monzo experience. We do not want to be originating mortgages on our balance sheet, because we have to hold hundreds of millions of capital, and the margin on it very, very low, and it's not differentiated. So we'd love to work with someone like Habito or Trussell to make sure you're getting the best mortgage out there, and that you can sign up with a few clicks, and it only takes you days, not months. But not on the Monzo balance sheet, almost certainly.
Hello, I
Hello.
have two questions about your map. The first one, how does it compare to the average UK population? Very curious about it, but I see more and more people using your Monzo card, but they most look like me, as a Londoner,
French
30s,
people, yeah.
let's say, living around the fintech area.
Yep.
And the second one is, will we see a map beyond the UK?
Aha! Two great map-related questions.
It's a disguised roadmap question.
So your first point, our first 1,000 customers, more or less, maybe even 5,000 customers, some of whom are here today, were very homogenous. They were overwhelmingly male. They all used iPhones. They lived, mostly speaking, in London. Many of them worked in technology. Some of them had beards, like me, and read TechCrunch. It really, really was very, very homogenous. I mean, something like 93% of our first 5,000 customers were male. It's really, really broadened out. So the last figures I looked at, 30% inside London, 70% outside. And the figures, London's population is something like 8 million out of 60 million. So whatever that maths is. Still a little bit over-indexed to London, but not massively so. I mean, it used to be 60% in London, now it's 30%. We skew towards younger people who live in cities. So 18 to 30 years old, about 60% of our customers are in that age range, with another 25% 30 to 40. So generally speaking, younger people, yes, more tech-savvy, more metropolitan. But it is getting more and more and more mainstream, I think, and long may that continue. I think we need to... Because of that, we've made some design choices in the past which don't work for everyone. So, for example, we don't have joint accounts. Our accounts are not well optimized if you have a family or sort of manage a household with multiple people. So that's something we need to be aware of. I also don't think it works enormously well for the really financially excluded or those on very, very low incomes. I might be wrong about that. So our average customer has our median customer salary is something like twice the national average. So the average UK salary household salary is something like 26,000 a year. Our the average, say, for Monzo customers, more like 45, 50. So pretty affluent. But it's part of this tech adoption cycle, I think. It just naturally goes through a wave. We'll see. So the second question was international expansion. We're pretty focused on getting the economics working in the UK and growing to 1 million or 2 customers, because that provides us with a really stable base on which to grow the marketplace, but also grow internationally. I've made comments publicly about the international markets we're looking at, and then been told by my team to stop doing that. In general, the market I'm excited about is America. I think it's really, really hard to go country by country across Europe. The language differences are significant, but beyond that, the cultural differences. The way a German person thinks about their money is very different to a Spanish person, to someone in the Nordics. The different payment mechanics, just cultural mentality around things like privacy and credit are just dramatically different. And so you find it, some of our competitors find it very hard to have one product that works delightfully in all countries. So the US, whilst different, at least allows us to only modify the product once to hopefully then appeal to 300 million people. Does that make sense? Cool, thank you.
Have you got any plans or thoughts or vague scribbles on the back of a napkin to expand into smaller financial products like credit cards or ISAs?
It's probably a similar... So I'll answer in 2 ways. Probably similar to the mortgage question, that we want to enable you to control those products from within Monzo, but they don't necessarily make sense for us. Especially the much larger items that are basically commodity products. We can make it easy for you to sign up for them and control them within the Monzo app. We don't necessarily want to be originating those products on our balance sheet. And so, for example, we'd love, if with pots you're able to save up £1,000, £2,000, we'd love to make it easy for you to sweep that into an ISA held with someone else. We just don't have productive ways to invest that money in order to pay you interest on it, which is why we don't pay interest. We stick it in the central bank, 99% of our deposits. The second answer to that question is, in some cases, I think banks have trained us to think about financial products in a way that that isn't rational, or rather suits their ends rather than our problems. So someone asked me the credit card question the other day, and I wrote a long post a few months ago on our community forum about this. Someone said, "Will you offer a credit card?" And I asked why, and she said, "Because I want to get a mortgage." I was like, genuinely, that is an interesting reason. I'd love to understand that. And she said, "Well, I'm new to the country. I don't have I don't have a credit footprint. Basically, you can't find me on the credit reference files, and so I can't get a mortgage. So I want to build credit score over time." And that's really interesting because there are a number of ways you can build credit score, right? And taking out a credit card is just the way banks have trained customers to think. Other people say, well, I want rewards, I want cashback, or I want Avios. Again, like there are ways of doing it without a credit card. Other people say, I want 30 days of cash-free borrowing. That is again something that you can offer by thinking about the user problem versus just simply throwing out a credit card. Other people say, I use it for medium or long-term borrowing. Again, like there are much better ways of accomplishing that than with a credit card. So I think by getting too focused on the financial product, you end up just replicating what every other bank offers versus stepping back and saying, tell me about what you're trying to accomplish. And let's see if we can rethink this and find a better way to solve it. That's what we've tried to do with everything here versus just roll out the same products as everyone else. We'll see.
Hi, how are you finding all the hot topics of regulations? Is it really painful? Because I've got exposure to a big bank which has a lot of expensive lawyers, a lot of expensive consultants working on it, and also a small charity where we spend 90% of our time looking at regulation papers rather than actually doing work. How do you find that? Is it really painful, or you're sort of floating in the middle because you've got the whole savvy idea?
We have a really great risk and compliance team, I think, who are smart and switched on and really commercial and understand the things that really matter versus the things that don't. We also have a very, very, very simple product. So it's a current account, basically. We don't have it's not like we have 1,000 different kinds of product to check out. And so we are a heavily regulated bank. We have to pay attention to it, but I wouldn't say it occupies a majority of our time, like our mind share. So there are two big things, GDPR and PSD2, that both on the horizon. We are aware of them both, but they're both pretty customer-centric. They're like, do the right thing by your customer. So we opened up APIs from day one without being obliged to, and so PSD2 is not a big deal for us. GDPR says, get explicit opt-in consent from users whenever you use their data. And again, we've been doing that from day one, and so GDPR for us is not a big deal. Or rather, it doesn't require massive changes in the way we work, because we've already, like from day one, said, of course we're not going to use your data without getting your explicit opt-in consent, because that's not right. So often sort of doing the right thing for the customer makes complying with the regulations not super burdensome. But I think you can get tied up in too much of a knot. There's a risk that GDPR will send lots of businesses on a wild goose chase. But if you're generally pretty customer focused, it helps, I think.
Hi.
Hello.
I have a question. So you mentioned wanting to get salaries into Monzo. I recently sent you back a contract of your affiliate, like an influencer contract thing. I need to open up like 100 accounts, and trying to send it around or chase 100 people is just fiddly. So I was wondering if there's like a batch upload. You said you're acquiring 60,000 accounts a month. I would assume that's not all through just the app on the iPhone. So is there like a batch or a business-to-business way that, let's say I took all of my staff in my company and said, I want to pay all your salaries into a Monzo account?
It is literally all one by one. It's individual customers one by one signing up because they hear about it from their friends.
Is there a business-to-business batch? No workaround? Nothing on the back of a napkin?
You should send them golden tickets. We could give you 100 golden tickets so you can send them out. Sorry. Honestly, it is all word of mouth. It's all individuals signing up.
Hi. So I was just thinking about boardroom culture, and I guess one of the things I've heard a lot about the UK boards is they're male, stale, and pale. And I wondered if you could give us a sense of what the Monzo board looks like.
Sure. We actually published this. So there was a blog post recently which publishes the sort of breakdown both at board and exec level. Our board is 8 people. 5 are male. I don't know how stale they are. 3 are women. I'm trying to think about. We publish a lot more statistics into this, but there's a headline breakdown.
Hi. About 15 years ago, I had a really good budgeting tool, which is pretty much every week, after all my direct debits were being paid out, I'd take out 150 quid in cash.
Yep.
And when it was gone, it was gone.
Yep.
And that really gave me a sense of how I could spend my money.
Yep.
Today, most spending is contactless.
Mm-hmm.
I have friends who are the age I was all those years ago, and they have no idea what's going on.
Yep.
And with the prepaid card, they could transfer some money over and use that card almost as a wallet that had money in it.
Mm-hmm.
What plans are there to give a similar level of control and understanding over finances?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you can still use a current account exactly the same way and set up you either use card top-ups, we prefer you didn't do that, or just send yourself 150 quid a month from your other bank. Again, we would prefer that you went full Monzo, let's say, and put everything in. But we then need to give you the tools to control that spend, which I guess is what you're asking. So there are 2 or 3 things we have. One is what we previously called budgeting. Is that wrong? We have so many internal names of like bills that don't go public that I forget what they're called currently. Basically, splitting out your spend into categories. So transportation, eating out, blah, blah, blah. And you're able to set targets. We call them targets. There we go. We have a new version of targets coming out very, very soon, which should enable you to start with your salary at the start of the month, plan out your direct debits and scheduled spend, and get to the end of the month without running out. So being able to granularly set kind of a budget or target per category and then give you nudges really, really helps. That will be live very, very soon on iOS and Android. It never launched on Android, which is on the prepaid at least, which is very frustrating. The second thing I think is connected to that, which is using pots in a more sensible way. So people use jam jars on their windows and just put money in for my direct debits, my what have you. I think we launched pots back in December, I think, was it? Or maybe January. Now something like 35 or 40% of all of our users are using pots, which is amazing. There's one rule, which is the round up pound thing. We'd love to do much more, many more rules around pots. So for example, you could say, as soon as I'm paid, sweep exactly what I need for my direct debits into a direct debit pot. Or take into all of my salary and just put it aside and then pay me back £150. So every week I'm just given a £150 allowance in my main account and the rest is out of sight, out of mind. Or you might say, hey, I work hard, I earn a good salary, whatever I spend doesn't matter, but at the end of the month take what's left and then sweep into a savings account. So these different rules you can configure to suit your lifestyle, and those are the things we will be working on in the next handful of months, let's say. So yeah, it's a great question and hopefully we'll make a lot of progress there.
Hi, apart from your overdraft and the marketplace much in the future, where do I see revenue coming from Monzo? Big chunk.
Those 2 areas, unsecured lending and marketplace. Because we can run an account for like less than 10 quid, honestly. We don't have to make tons of money on, it's my rant about banks, but other banks, so the average bank will earn about £60 from the overdraft. Half of that is interest, half of it's fees and charges. They'll make another 20-ish quid from foreign exchange because they're adding a massive padding. They'll use that money to then lend into mortgages, etc. So there are just a bunch of fees and charges that we don't have, but we can support that because it only costs us a tenner to run an account. The marketplace, hopefully, in the long term, should really drive a lot of revenue. We're done? Okay, thank you very much. Some great questions. I'll hang around for 10 or 15 minutes if you want to chat privately. I'm about to get dragged off stage. But thank you very much for coming. I really, really appreciate all of the questions and all your support over the last couple of years. Thank you.